Hey, Fanboy Nation.
This is your pal Daffy Duck, and you're watching.
We're watching
Fanboy.
Fanboy,
fanboy, etc.
Fanboy Nation.
I assume Tom.
This afternoon, I have the tremendous pleasure of reconnecting with Brian Heiler, who wrote Rack Toys and is getting a second publishing through, I can never pronounce.
Nacelle.
Thank you, Nacelle Company. You know, I can pronounce Brian Volk Weiss, but I can't pronounce Nacelle for some reason. But we're going to have a good time talking about toys. So
I misspelled Brian Volkswagen's name in everything. And we had to do a stop the presses. I always want to put an E on the end of that Volk.
Well, Rack Toys has got to be one of the most interesting concepts for action figures, tie-ins to properties, and things that we would never expect to have a toy. I mean, you have James Bond dog tags in the book. You have some really cool stuff. And then the last time we talked, you pointed out something that was really unique because the packaging was gorgeous that had absolutely nothing to do with the toys.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of that kind of stuff, actually. I can't remember which one we were talking about. It might have been this. Was it this one, the Freedom Force tool set?
Yes, it was the Freedom Force tool set. You know, of which, Mighty Isis, for some reason, has a hot hacksaw.
Yeah. Well, it's in case she needs to cut some pipe. That is a really great example. And the thing I love most about this, there's two classes of rack toys. There's the stuff that tries and then the stuff that doesn't. And this doesn't. This one's so bad, it is just a Hong Kong, they had these molds and they slapped this different card on it. There's no stickers on the product. So once this bubble gets removed, you have a tool set. The memory of Freedom Force will be, that hits the garbage. And there's a lot of stuff like that. There's a Planet of the Apes Boomerang. I'm a huge Planet of the Apes fan. And the Boomerang's quite expensive and rare. But it doesn't even have a sticker on it that says Planet of the Apes. So if a kid took that off the card, it's just a yellow boomerang, and I always kind of that actually deflated my desire to buy it. I didn't want to pay all that money for something that was so basic and generic, even though the card art was gorgeous.
In some instances, isn't it more the purchase for the artwork than it is the actual toy? Because like you said, if the toy has nothing to do with the property, but the art is worth it, you really don't want to take it out of the packaging anyway.
Oh, absolutely. You're right. I don't know. You just have these little collector, you reason with yourself, the weird collector logic as to why you don't want to spend that money. And the bottom line is toys are expensive. So, you can talk yourself out of anything. The best thing I can say, though, is that the other appeal to rack toys is the unintentional humor. They're great conversation pieces. They're silly. Whenever I do toy shows, I bring the book and I bring a few, leftovers from doing the book, and they always get a rise out of people. They always make people laugh, and that just goes to show you their appeal. They're very charming toys.
Okay, here's the biggie. So, rack toys, as we've discussed previously, and we're gonna put it here, often didn't last longer than the afternoon. As you had told me at some point. You take it out of the package. Spider-Man's got a parachute. I don't know why. Webbing. I think you have a Superman one with a parachute, which makes no sense. I think he's been exposed to gold kryptonite at that point.
Yeah, and he's also wearing gloves for some reason. It's a very maybe he's going to the bottle city of Candor.
Maybe he's got to visit his relatives over there.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a point where you look at it and I could have bought this for 75 cents as a kid, or even 3 years ago, and here it is $185, and you're kind of kicking yourself at that point?
Oh yeah, especially me, because my parents sold this stuff when I was a kid. And so I had access to, everything, the parachuting Mr. Spocks and pullback Batmobiles and Lincoln Monsters and yeah. And, you lived for today as a child. I never thought to save any of that stuff. And my parents would have just thought I was crazy. I can remember, I think I was about 16 and I had found a case of Planet of the Apes, Mego Planet of the Apes figures. And I paid a guy $10 a figure. So the case was, I think, like $240. And I brought it home and I was showing my dad, and my dad said, "Oh yeah, I bought a truckload of these ones for 33 cents. How much did you pay?" And he just couldn't see the value in it. And what can you do? So yeah, I have lots of kick myself, stories.
I would be muttering to myself for years on end to know that Dad had a truckload for 37 cents and I spent $240 on 24 of them.
Well, yeah, but this was 10 years later. But yeah, he just didn't keep any. And he sold them. And I thought the supply and those salad days would never run out, but he ended up selling his business in the early 1980s, and he got into like stuff that wasn't as cool. They put food on the table, but it wasn't toys.
How disheartening would it be if you found out at some point that there's a Heiler warehouse that your dad kept secret from you, and it's all the toys that you spent hundreds upon thousands of dollars for, and it's just all sitting there fresh in the box, without a crease on some of the packaging?
I would, that would be disappointing. Yes. I think secret family warehouses would be terrible. Like, I actually did clean out my folks' old warehouse, and I got a bunch of keychains and weird paraphernalia. And I did find a book of postcards with Betty Page in them, but no, the toys they're just gone, man. They're just gone. The one thing I did find, and it's in the book, is his sign he used to put up in store windows for the toy center. And I've got a stack of those, and I'll never sell them. They're very like R. Crumb inspired. I think whatever artist he hired, was probably a little counterculture, and my dad probably didn't pick up on that. But the art is awesome on them.
Is that some of the appeal as an adult collector of rack toys, in the art itself, or the toy and the memories that it brought to you 6 years old? Superman on a parachute, throw him up in the air, parachute tears. All right, well, there went 37 cents.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all intertwined. It's all. I'm an artist myself, and I love the visuals of the packaging. I also appreciate, this is a time when licensing was Wild West. Now you couldn't get away with what these guys do. I've worked in licensing. I've worked in DC Comics, and it's really rigid. There's not much room for creativity. You read these, what they call style guides, and you go, oh, you got to put this there. It's got to be this color. And it's like, back then, they would do a different card for every Batman toy, and it was almost like they were competing for a kid's attention. So this card would look like that, and this card would, be completely different. And that stuff all got passed. And there was also, less control over what you could make too, because I can't tell you how many Spider-Man handguns there are. Like, I'm talking like dirty, hairy guns with handcuffs, and because at the time Marvel's licensing agent was like Stan Lee's assistant, and she just would approve stuff, take the check. And so you got all these like weird hilarious items that are just with bizarre artwork, and it was a magical time. I think I miss we need some of that back. Things are a little too bland and generic out there.
Well, you do have one Superman squirt gun in there where if you squeeze his thigh, water shoots out of his fist.
Yeah.
And then
How
there is
creative is that?
it's quite creative. Not
Yeah.
as creative as the Squeeze Batman's manhood, and he's vomiting water the whole time from the pain of it all.
And I have another one in that series. There's a Popeye one just like that. And there's also one I have, and I posted it years ago as the worst thing I own. It is a topless mermaid. This was made for children somewhere. And it's like, I think a friend of mine sent it to me, like, I have to send you this. And it's definitely from the same company that made the Batman. So you're kind of like, who thought this was a great idea?
And is it sitting next to your Popeye corncob pipe that was sold to children?
No, I do not own one of those. I like to say this: Popeye was like the Krusty the Clown of rack toys. Like, I don't know, King Feature Syndicate seemed to have like just this open door policy, and if they made a rack toy, it has Popeye on it. I'm talking like medical bags and just crazy unrelated stuff. And one of my favorites is in the book is the Popeye Shaving Kit, because when you think of shaving, you think of Popeye the Sailor Man. And I'm pretty sure on the card he's going like, hey, like he needs it. And it's like, wow, they really even tried to like tie this in a little bit, like he needs a shave.
Well, my favorite Popeye tie-in is the vitamin shop up in Canada that you guys have.
Oh yeah, that's not really a vitamins. It's like supplements. Like if you're a bodybuilder, it's like muscle milk and all that kind of stuff. Because I made that mistake. I take a lot of vitamins, and I went in there and I was like, oh no, this isn't for me. Yeah, that's a weird. That's a weird. I didn't realize that was a Canada only thing.
Yeah, because when I visited my cousin for her wedding up there, and I was like, why is there a Popeye like GNC type place over here? I don't get it. How like Popeye has a vitamin store.
What's even a more obscure comic strip reference is I was doing business in Montreal, and my coworker goes, "You hungry?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's all right, let's go get a sub. And I figured we'd go to like Subway or something like that. We ended up at a place called, well, he actually said, "I'm going to go get you a Dagwood," and it's a sandwich shop called Dagwood's that's everywhere. And it is like they use that word like to say sub, Dagwood. And that's like from Blondie. Like Blondie looked old when I was a kid, like when it looked like it was a 50-year-old strip when I was 9. And I just thought that was like, does anyone know that anymore? Like, like when you say Blondie to people, they think the band.
Well, maybe Richie Rich's tie-in will be a at the smartest level, a piggy bank at least.
Yeah.
You have some ridiculous ones in the book. You have some really cool ones in there. I made mention of that James Bond one as well.
Yeah.
There's a moment where you sit there and you're like, I have this collection. My parents were in this industry. I know to capitalize on this and my childhood legacy, I'm going to write a book. Like, what was the catalyst 10 years ago to sit down and actually write this book for your, love story with rack toys?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. I've always wanted to write a toy book. Like, I have notepads from high school where I have like written this terrible toy book. And at the time, I was writing for the Village Voice, another topless robot site, and we were doing all these kind of fun articles. And my Plaid Stallion site was starting to really take off in popularity. And I've always been kind of interested. I love toy books. I collect them. And I was trying to figure out, well, what could I do that would would set apart. I don't want to just do another action figure book, or I want to do something that's like has its own voice. And I think there was a couple of books out there that really inspired me, and one of them was I think it's called So Crazy Japanese Toys, and it's mainly vinyl. Japanese sobufi. I dabble, and I really liked that. I really thought that was a wonderful book. And of course, I'm a fan of Chip Kid. And then, yeah, I think what happened was I had gone to Motor City Comic Con with my friend, and I had picked up this. There was a guy with just tons of Planet of the Apes stuff. And that's the first thing I asked him was like, do you have the Planet of the Apes helicopter? And he said, I do. And I gave this man $100 for it. And it's just one of my favorite pieces because it's a Batman helicopter, and they've put a little gorilla in there. Like, they put a little effort into this, but it's so fun. It's so sarcastic. And I was just driving home one day, and you know how you get these kind of like moments of Zen, like your best ideas come to you in the shower or when you're comfortable. And, you know, just driving home at the end of the day. And I remember exactly where I was. I was in front of a variety store that was in my neighborhood that had, still had rack toys. They still had army men and stuff like that, because it's across from my kid's school. And that was it. I went, oh my God, that would be such a fun book. And on the drive home, I had it all planned out, you know, like you could do this, you could do that. And I just believed in it. I really believed in it. I had to go back to school to learn how to design it, because the designer I was working with was a friend of mine, and he just had no pop culture. He had no pop culture muscle whatsoever. Like, you know, he would put Mr. Spock on Captain Kirk, and I was like, oh man, like, you really don't get, you know, he doesn't know superheroes, he doesn't know anything. And I realized, like, the only way I can do this is to lay it out myself. And my God, I learned a lot in that year. And it was frustrating, and it was long, and it was terrifying. And I went through a lot of rejection letters, and I decided to self-publish, which was one of the best decisions I've ever made. I highly recommend taking a leap of faith now and then. And as you know, we're sitting here, obviously it took 10 years, but it paid off.
Well, you did something right. And for the sequel, you have your friend who has zero pop culture knowledge, and you can just title his version of the book "How to Piss Off a Fanboy."
How to Piss Off a Fanboy. And also, he is slightly dyslexic, so that it'll be riddled with spelling mistakes.
And make sure there's no editing on it. It'll be even better. So Anglophiles will lose their minds trying to figure, you know, and grammar Nazis and everybody else, they'll just lose their minds over all of this. Like, you've hit the trifecta of offense.
Yeah. I actually, that would be a fun book. All those memes where they misquote, they put a picture of Gandalf and they say, use the Force, and they say Mr. Spock. You know, that could be kind of a fun book, is just like pissing off fanboys, the book.
Well, I bought those novelty shirts, the one where it says Star Trek #1 fan, it's the Millennium Falcon, and then Star Wars #1 fan, and it's the Enterprise.
Oh, those are awesome. Yeah.
So,
and those kind of have a dollar store rack toy feel to them too, because you do get, when you get into the world of knockoffs, you know, like, I don't know if you've ever seen them. They go around, you see this box of action figures, and it says the Avengers, and there's like a Shrek in there, and a Spider-Man, and a Superman, and like a Power Ranger. That's very in tune with the sense of humor of my book, is that nobody cared at that company. They just shoved pop culture characters into a bubble. You know?
Okay, so would rack toys and then the dollar store knockoff toys like be in the same category, where you have like Lucha Libre Spider-Man for the little wrestling sets and stuff, or are they two totally different communities?
Well, there is a knockoff culture, and that's something I hope to explore in a future publication, because I did some knockoffs in the chapter rack toys. The last chapter in the book, I think, is called "Hey, Knock It Off," and that was the most fun of all the chapters, because one, and this is just lazy authorship, you barely ever know who made this stuff, because they don't put their name on it, because it's like a fly-by-night thing. So you don't have to like do any sort of historical nonsense. You just basically have to go, well, yeah, this is supposed to be this, but it's this, they didn't have the money for Battlestar Galactica, so it's, they're called Cybots or something. Yeah, I'm just pulling something out. There's no such thing as that, but and there's so much of that stuff, and that I think those industries are kind of intertwined. It's the cheap impulse item, the thing that really you're not supposed to notice, and it's still going on today. I mean, there's still some hilarious junk out there.
Is there a class distinction between, say, rack toys and then the novelty toys? The joy buzzers, the whoopee cushions. Is there like looking at the people that like the novelty toys versus the rack toys, and there's like, you're those people that have that sensibility for rubber vomit? We don't deal with those types.
Yeah, that's like the magic shop stuff. I know it was often sold, like my dad sold that stuff too. I vividly remember that stuff. I remember the racks. But yeah, people who collect that stuff don't necessarily collect rack toys as well. That's its own genre, and there's a really great book on that called Mail Order Mysteries that I highly recommend. It's an excellent book. It's well designed, and it covers X-ray specs and that kind of wacky stuff that you'd see in comic books that I didn't necessarily cover in rack toys whatsoever.
So you still don't have a jar of sea monkeys somewhere?
No. My dad sold those too, and I didn't understand how to make that work, and my mom was really worried I drank them. I remember that as a kid. I was very young. I couldn't read very well, and I think I ended up just pouring the sea monkeys seeds down the sink. Like I was, you're a kid, and I honestly thought, and I thought if you put those in the water, boom, they turn into those characters that were in the ads, like those half man, half fish people, because I couldn't read that. That disclaimer was purposely very lofty. If you remember, caricatures depicted do not represent, a 6-year-old just doesn't pick up on that. So I assumed I was going to get little sea people.
And all you got was murky water.
All I got was murky water that I accidentally let down the drain. So
this is something I'm curious about.
Mm-hmm.
Your grandfather,
Mm-hmm.
Like either like since your dad is selling rack toys and these novelty toys and everything else, was like grandpa like a strict, authoritarian type person and then just looked at us and go, what the hell are you doing? Or were you guys like circus people? And that like, hey, go ahead, have fun.
My grandfather was a really hardworking guy, and he owned several businesses. He owned, believe it or not, he owned a variety store and a small grocery store / variety store. He owned a shoe store. He had, a business where people cleaned, office buildings at night. He was a World War II veteran, and he believed in his, like they had that code about them of being chill and relaxed and easy. He liked Lawrence Welk, he was the stereotype. My grandfather dressed better to do gardening than I do to go to a wedding. I mean, I'm talking hat and ascot and the whole deal. But he enjoyed his hobbies. He had model trains. But it was a very, he was a very sensible guy. He was a very straight, impeccably dressed, very neat guy. And my dad was a little more chaotic. He was also a hard worker. But like he would come home with he'd go on the road and sell and have crazy adventures, and then come home with like a Cadillac he won in a poker game. He was a little bit like he was pretty stable and even keeled too, but he did have his odd, the odd moment where it's like, I always joke with my daughter. We were watching TV one night. It's like 9 o'clock. I'm in my pajamas, and my dad sees a commercial for the McRib coming back, and then I'm in the car with him at McDonald's in my pajamas and a winter coat because he wanted a McRib. And it's like, but that's not complaining. That, I like a little bit of that. And I'm complete chaos. I am a really whim driven human being where I just, like, my wife and I are really bad for each other. We'll famously, the best one I can think of is we were having dinner and the Chicago Toy Show was happening, and it was Friday night, and she just went, "Do you want to go, like, right now?" And we just drove to Chicago. No plans, no hotel reservations. That's my marriage.
That sounds like fun.
It was a blast. It's a lot of work, but
By the way, if I do a pull quote video to, like, market this,
yeah,
it's going to be that line of, my grandfather dressed better to garden than I do when I go to a wedding.
Yeah. I was going through an old family album, and I couldn't believe what he was wearing to garden. A Tilly hat and an ascot and a safari jacket, like what Forrest Jackerman used to wear. And it was like, yeah, I've never looked that good,
Whereas I'm the type that's like, man, these shoes are new. I'm not cutting across the grass.
His gardening clothes are better than the stuff I go to my office with. It was just like, wow, he was really impeccably dressed. Why didn't I keep that? Why couldn't I gotten that and not the receding hairline?
Listen, don't complain to me about a receding.
Oh,
it's all gone. All right? All right. The big question: what is the buyer's remorse rack toy in your collection?
So like the toy I bought from my collection that I kind of like, I wish I hadn't, or oh gosh, yeah, there was one that I bought. What was it? I paid a lot for it because I wanted the joke. Oh, it was the Trapper John medical set. And, because, like, the show Trapper John MD was not like a child friendly show. But what these rack toy guys would do is they go, well, we got to sell these tropes. So, like, guns, they would license any cop show, like Vegas, or the one that kills me is there's one called, and this is an obscure show starring George Kennedy of all people, called The Blue Knight, where he's just a beat cop. I don't remember this show, but like one toy company, Laramie, made like 50 different toys with George Kennedy's face on the card, and so Trapper John was definitely just licensed, probably because somebody had MASH, or like another company had MASH, so they made these medical sets, and I paid a lot of money for it just for the laugh. And I put it in a tub after. And what is very common to happen was the bubble just fell right off the card, and all the pieces like scrambled around this bin. And I was kind of like, oh, great. Like, I spent all that money because this was US dollars and US shipping. And now I can't get rid of this. Nobody will want this. And it's like, that's probably my only real regret. I don't have a lot of regrets, like doing this book is, I ended up, like, my wife called it, my office looked like a junk store, and it's like, yeah, I probably need to pare this down a bit, and I eventually took it to a level that was better because it was just all over the walls at one point.
And so now the book itself and the re-release for the 10th anniversary is a complete tax write-off of everything you've ever spent on these rack toys in that time frame.
Impossible. Just impossible. I have, the book actually my publishing of the book made a profit, but not if you looked at the stuff I bought, like we don't talk about that. But yeah.
For the re-release of the book, is it virtually the same book and now has a bigger publisher, or is there like an extra chapter? Or because I know there's a new foreword that goes along with it.
Actually, it's an afterword by Brian Volk Weiss, and it's wonderful. He's one of us, so to speak. He gets it. What I did was a number of different things. I added some pages. I added some content. I've bought some things over the last 10 years that I wanted to add to the book itself. And honestly, I had to stop because I was never going to stop. You just want to keep putting more strokes on it. You have to walk away from something. But also, due to the publishing, the nature of the printer, I had to swap some photos, update some things. I've become a much better designer since then. I publish my own magazine now. And so, yeah, it is like, friends of mine have said, look, I've got the first book. Do I need to buy this? And it's like, nobody needs to buy this, but I think you're good. It's not a completely new book. It is expanded. They're calling it the definitive edition through Nacelle, and that's definitely true. It does have more content. It has, but I could probably add another 100 pages if I wanted to. It's just it's endless.
So we found the sequel.
Oh gosh, no. I'm going to spin it off into something else that I'm hoping to announce in the next 6 months. But yeah, no, I love it. It was wonderful to come back to it, but I want to move to something different for the next publication.
Yeah. So every year when Comic-Con rolls around, when we could go,
oh yeah,
I would joke that I'm waiting to see the kid that's being dragged around the Comic-Con floor and just bellow at his father, I don't want to be here. I want to go to the Padres game.
Padres game. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Is there a point where your kids looked at you and go, look, Dad, I'm 6 and this is too much?
I think my kids are actually both. My daughter doesn't collect toys, but my son actually does collect. Well, it breaks my heart. He's into the prequels. And, I think the only thing was I tried like mad to get him into my childhood. So I would buy him reproduction Adventure Team G.I. Joes, whatever counted as a reproduction of Amigo at the time. I think when he was young, there was these kind of semi-Mego type figures. And it didn't take. He gravitated towards, and this is not actually a bad thing. He gravitated towards what his peers were playing with. So, the Batman, the animated series style figures and Lego. And so I guess that's about the only thing I could really say is that I couldn't get him into my stuff. On my daughter's side, she very much became a musical. One of my other hobbies is record collecting and music, and she definitely took that from me. But she also rebels by listening to stuff I don't like. And I thought, how could you possibly pick bands that I don't like? Because I'm pretty much into any genre. But no, she found some, and I don't know if it's done out of sincerity or irony. It's really hard to tell, but kids will find ways to rebel if they can. And but they have their own worlds. But I think they enjoy. Actually, my daughter didn't enjoy the book process. She did not. That's why I didn't immediately sequel Rack Toys. She was like 6 or 7, and she just basically said, please don't write another book, because she missed hanging out with me, because it was a very intense year of going to work and then going to work. So I felt that a little bit and took a break, and I'm glad I did.
And the one album that she has that you hate the most is the Swedish 1987 remix of Aha's Take on Me. I get it.
I wish it was. No, it would be corn.
Okay, so you're not a corn fan.
Nope.
And here's the thing though, they're really nice guys.
I'm sure they are.
Does it make it harder if you hate a band's music, but then you meet the band and they turn out to be like the nicest people you've met in the last like year and a half?
Yeah, I think that would be very difficult. I forget. Well, this one was easy for me. A lot of people, like, I'm not a really big comic guy, but I know enough that Rob Liefeld is, a name that's bandied about. And there's, personally, I've never really read anything. I've seen some of his work, but I was not into comics at that time. And he is extremely nice to me. And, if somebody asked me, I'd say, I think he's a very nice guy, and he's very successful at what he does. I mean, he's involved in like the creation of Deadpool. That's pretty big. So, but yeah, I've heard a lot about people I don't really truly respect, like they're artistic. And then you find out that they're like the sweetest human being. And it's like, well, at least they're good people. Your output, I'm past that stage of hating on things. I'm too old. I dislike stuff, but so what? If other people are into it, that's fine. Watch your Fast and the Furious movies. I'll be over there. But I think that's one of the joys of kind of seeping into middle age for some, is you kind of mellow out. And I just don't have the venom for stuff anymore. I only want to find stuff I like, and I'll just ignore the stuff I don't like, I guess.
Well, Rob is one of the nicest people I've ever met. He only lives like about 15 minutes away from me. I talked to him a couple of weeks ago, so he's doing very well.
I actually like his podcast. I've listened to that a few times because he hits on topics, and so I know him less from comics and more from like Twitter and podcasts. And yeah, he sounds like a really good guy.
You're having fun with all the rack toy stuff and re-releasing of the book. When the book was announced to be re-released, or at least was commissioned, they're like, hey, you know what? We want to give you a bigger publishing right with us. What was that like for you when you sat there and go, my self-published book is being recognized by this company that does Behind the Attractions and The Toys That Made Us and so many other, docu-series based on fandoms?
It was a weird thing because it so was intertwined. It's my baby. And I am also a Libra. So we're just terrible at decisions. It's one of those things. So I kind of just sat there and sat on it for a while. And then, I had this epiphany because people were asking me, would I bring it back in print? And it was, it's one of those weird things on Amazon where it starts going for like $100. And you're like, really? And I didn't have it. I only had a couple copies. So I just had a conversation with myself. And the conversation was, well, are you going to do anything with this? And it's like, no, I want to do other things. And then it's like, well, why wouldn't you throw your hat in the ring with this successful company who believes in it? And I signed up, and I'm really glad I did. They've been absolutely phenomenal. Their publicity department has booked me on shows like yours, and the book is selling very well and being very well received. And I'm extremely happy I did this. And I also didn't know this was going to happen, but I'm the premiere book for them. I thought that we would be a slew of, releases, but no, I'm the first book, and that's pretty validating. I don't know. I'm a self-deprecating guy, and I don't take compliments well, but it's hard not to feel extremely validated and complimented by all of these actions. So, I'm very grateful to them, and it's all a little surreal. Like, I know I'm in the Matrix now, you know.
And it's like going back to school and going, and that's what you get for telling me a 2.5 GPA will never get me anything.
There are some grade school teachers that if, you know, I could let them see this, I would, you know. Especially I had a really mean art teacher, and I would love to send her a copy, you know.
Hopefully she's still with us, that she could actually see the copy.
Oh, she was pretty young. Yeah.
No, I mean, like,
probably,
cognizant there and everything.
oh yeah. She'd probably only be in her early 60s now. And yeah, I would love to autograph that copy with I never amounted to anything artistically. Just as you predicted.
Or actually put in there, those who can do. And then
I'll never do this because I already.
That's why we're making fun of it, because like, we could come up with these miserable, like, evil ideas and schemes, but I don't think we could actually implement them.
Well, actually, the funniest thing happened with her is about a year later. I was working in a restaurant, and she was eating with her friend in there, and she was no fan of mine, and she knew I was no fan of hers. And I did this thing, and it was the smartest thing I could have done at 17 years old. I stuck my head out the window of, you know, the little bay restaurant window, and she looked at me and she went, "Hi." And I'm like, "Hi." And it was just like a little, like, I made your lunch. And then I put my head back in. I did nothing to her food.
Joke on that, lady.
Yeah.
No.
But it was just a, you know, spend the rest of the day wondering what you just put in your body.
You know, that's more fun than actually doing anything to it.
Exactly. It was just so funny. You know, truth be told, I don't even think I actually made her lunch. I think my coworker did, but it was just, you know, it was just one of those things where you're just kind of like, that was awesome.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay, so I do have to ask this question. I know I asked this before in private. Now we're going to put this in public. Something in your toy collection, and I asked Volkweiss this as well, that say your daughter needed braces, and in order to pay for them, you had to sell this one item that you were attached to in order to pay for them. What would it be?
Well, I've done this. I sold like before the pandemic. My daughter wanted to go to Mexico, and I thought for Girl Guides, and I thought it was expensive. You know, it'd be a couple grand, and I decided to sell my collection of Mego 1 million BC dinosaurs, which were all mint in the box. They're very rare. And the figures, what's ironic is they did a series of caveman action figures and dinosaurs. And the dinosaurs are very rare. And I somehow, through luck and circumstance, stumbled onto all three in the box over the years for a reasonable price. But I have no interest in the cave people action figures. So, you know, I had a conversation with myself, and I said, you know, it was just one of those things where I was like, well, I want her to have this experience. I have dragged her to toy shows, flea markets. So it felt right to do this. Now, unfortunately, the whole thing got canceled due to COVID, but I did sell them. And it was hard for about a day. And then I haven't thought of them since. You know, you can say goodbye to stuff. And if my kid needed something else, like braces or any of that, I don't think there's anything I own, well, other than some childhood toys, that I wouldn't sell, because I could see it again. There's a lot of stuff you can see again, you know.
I hope you got a refund for that trip that got canceled.
I did. It took a long time, and I had to, but it's now our side yard. That's where we put the money. We had a side yard.
So wait a minute. A set of 1 million BC caveman toys that you didn't even really care for. It was in your collection, basically built you a patio.
Pretty much. Yeah. 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 It's actually a place where my wife grows potatoes. Yeah.
Of all the vegetables someone wants to grow, I think that's pretty low maintenance to sit there and go, I'm going to have a potato farm.
Potatoes and tomatoes. Got tons.
Let's hope she doesn't crossbreed the two fruits and
Tobacco?
vegetables together. Yeah.
There's the Simpsons about that.
It could happen in Canada. I mean, you guys got some weird stuff up there.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. We have a Tim Hortons on every block. And
okay, I've heard of Tim Hortons. I saw one when I was in Quebec. Like, is it your guys' Dunkin' Donuts or
yeah.
Krispy
Yeah, I would
comparison?
trade. No, because Krispy Kreme is all about like the confection, the donut. Tim Hortons donuts. Like I remember a friend of mine came down, my podcast partner Jason came down from LA once, and he's like, "Oh, I gotta check out a donut at Tim Hortons." Is like, I should have warned him. It's like they're not special. It's just a coffee house, so it's like Dunkin' in that regard. But I would trade with you. I prefer Dunkin' Donuts coffee very much.
Well, Costco had like a coupon for like 5, up to 5 of them, like discounted for the 2.5 pounds. For those of you in Canada, a kilo worth of coffee of Dunkin' Donuts.
Thank you for metricing that up.
Yes, for like $13. So I bought 3 kilos today just so I could stock up on coffee.
Oh, I do the same. I love that stuff. I was actually getting it shipped from Target in the States. They had, and it's like I realized like I'm paying like almost $5 a pot doing this, So I was like, oh, maybe I'll cut this out. But that's one of the things that was my go-to every time I visit the States is I go to Target and buy like 5 bags of Dunkin' Donuts coffee. And I miss it.
Is Tim Hortons coffee really good, or like you're just so used to it, it almost becomes like, AM, PM, or 7-Eleven coffee? Not that I'm knocking it. I'm just saying that like it's just that convenient.
Those that like it a lot. But I don't, it's not my favorite. No. I'm a bad Canadian. I don't watch hockey, and I drink beer, thank God. But no, I'm not I can take it or leave it, but it is very popular.
You know what? Just be that jerk and be like, hockey was developed in the Czech Republic, so it's not even ours.
I don't want to get beat up.
Ruin every preseason game with that statement, and every Stanley Cup game, game 1 with that statement.
Actually, yeah. Well, we'll just rely on basketball. We'll just take that one.
That is yours, but the Americans perfected it.
It was developed in the States by a Canadian, so technically it's ours. I'd like to share that, although
listen,
I don't want to cause a controversy.
We gave you guys a chance to become Americans, and
we burned down the White House.
I know, and then you kept spelling everything, French. Or want to be British with the RE instead of the ER, and you kept your U's.
We did.
And then you use like British slang with our accent, which makes no sense to us whatsoever. I've heard Jordan Peterson sit there and go bloody all the time. I was like, what is this guy talking about? Who's bleeding? And then I realized, oh yeah, he's Canadian.
Yeah, my grandfather, that was the second word out of my mom's dad. He loved the word bloody. He said it all the time. In fact, I will say bloody hell a lot. And that's probably from that side of the family. That's funny. I never thought of that. But don't think I haven't noticed that like spell check always tries to say you're spelling favor wrong. It's like, I'm spelling favor right. So that is the struggle that is being Canadian.
You're like, what's with all these U's? We don't need these.
Yeah. Or check, it's CHEQUE. It's not CHECK. That drives me crazy.
So you guys kept the French spelling on that one.
Yeah.
And welcome to the linguistics lesson in the
Yeah,
portion of
this
interview.
is how, what does this have to do with dime store toys, and how did we get here?
We have to
right,
intellectualize it a
me.
little bit.
Yeah. Well, I tend to do this. I tend to take tangents and run with them.
We had our coffee talk. We had our linguistics talk, our spell check aspect, and the spell check goes back to the book because now you have to have the American printing and you have to spell it our way.
That's right. Except I didn't. I'm glad that like rack toys, the word is the same here than it is in the US, because that would have been a hill to die on for me. But
we spell it RA'Q U.
Rock toys.
We have to have fun with it because listen, the idea of some of these toys, as we've mentioned, commissioning every TV show that was a cop show with
Just
guns and badges and everything else. Yeah. And it's a brilliant marketing ploy to sit there and go, well, we have this overabundance of cap guns. This kid's dad loves Dragnet. This kid's dad loves Police Story. So we'll put Leslie Nielsen's face on this one.
The one that kills me is there's like a whole page of Matt Houston toys in one of the catalogs I have, and it's like, the kids watch Matt Houston. Like, did anyone watch Matt? Like, it was sort of like the wish.com version of Magnum PI. And I just found that really, like, some of the pages you just look at and go, this is so strange. And there's a whole page of Stallone Rocky memorabilia, like, little everything relating to boxing. None of it really has anything to do with Rocky, but you're just sitting there like, man, they just took their shots because it was so cheap to do. And I wonder honestly if brands now avoid that sort of thing. I think it might be considered detrimental to a lot of brands to, like you can imagine like a Marvel movie, like a Guardians of the Galaxy having a water pistol that has nothing to do with Guardians of the Galaxy. It just says it on there. Like, you don't see that anymore. I think it's been priced out, and that's something of a shame, in my opinion.
Well, I want a Rocket Raccoon rat catcher.
Yeah, absolutely. I want a rat catcher. Well,
I was looking for the Marvel tie-in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I went DC on you.
I know you totally did. But all right, here's the deal. You have full carte blanche. And you get to make the most ridiculous, unnecessary, unrealistic toy tie-in you can, a la the Freedom Force, for example. Rack toy for a character. What would it be? And which character?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Well, I think I would have to go with a TV show I love called Quincy. And yeah, I'm like, I make my own custom parachutists, but I think a parachuting Quincy would be the most sublime thing I could own or create.
Would he have a little medical bag with him, or would it be so
Absolutely.
ridiculous that you give him like plumber's tools?
Oh, no, he would be in his red members only jacket, and yeah, he'd probably have his little medical bag. But actually, no, those parachuting figures are usually in this position, so no, it'd just be Quincy hanging on to it for his dear life.
With the red cross on the top of the parachute?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, medical examiner, the logo.
How phenomenal would that be? Maybe someone will custom make you a Quincy parachuter.
I made my friend a Rockford Files one because I just, he was a huge fan, and it's so fun to look at. Like, when you're done with the project, it's just so stupid. And I wish I had kept going with it. I could mold them and do all this stuff. And I did some monsters and a couple of different characters from TV shows I liked, but I really wanted to get crazy, like Mr. Rourke and Tattoo and the Love Boat and all that stuff. But you only have so much time in this life, and a lot of that custom stuff I just can't do. I'm just taking on too much as it is, and they're fun, but maybe it's for someone else to do. And there is another artist who's doing that stuff now, and he gave me an Aquaman. He mailed it to me. It was really nice, and it looks like it came right out of the factory in the 70s, parachuting Aquaman, and it's awesome. It's on the wall with my licensed ones because it's special to me, and it was nice that he gave it to me as a gift. It was like that was there's a few people who have sent me some custom rack toys, and they're always really welcome. It's really nice that you can get, like, you can inspire somebody to do something, and that's validation of in of itself, I guess.
That's absolutely phenomenal. And if you ever find the Rockford File 1975 gold Trans Am, please let me know, because that would be fun to drive anyway. That would be fun. I would just like James Gardner's hair. He had a phenomenal pompadour going on there all the way to the end, man. He kept it there. So yeah. Brian, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Where can we find you on social media if we want to connect with you? Where can we find the book, and where can we sit there? And if we, is there a PO box that we can just mail you the book with postage and go, here, mail this back to me if we want it signed? Or are there signed copies that we could purchase? Well, I'll be selling signed copies at my site, which is Plaid Stallions, probably next month. I bought a wholesale order. You can also find me on, obviously I'm on Facebook as Plaid Stallions, Twitter, and I have a YouTube channel called, which is called Brick Mantooth, which is based on the spokesmodel for Plaid Stallions. We do a quarterly magazine called Toy Ventures, which is definitely spun out of Rack Toys, but it explores, obscure action figures, weird merchandise. You're not going to get G.I. Joe from me, but you're going to get Sergeant Rock, that kind of magazine. And you can get Rack Toys at racktoysbook.com. That'll give you the link to Amazon for Nacelle. And I believe it's available at a few shops. I know it's available in Oregon at Dr. Tung's I Had That shop, which is a really cool store. And he's got, I've included some autographed postcards. Now, I can't physically sign people's books unless they're mailed to me, but any shop that's selling the book, I will send these. I had these done years ago, these Rack Toy postcards, and I will sign them so that they can add them with the book. So they can just reach out to me via the site. It's also available in Atlanta at Bizarro Wuxtree. I know that those are the two stores I know that have it right now. And if you're a shop that's carrying the book, reach out to me. I'd love to promote it. Brian, I love talking to you, man. We're going to have to catch you up soon again. I got something I want to ask you real quick once we hit stop, and I think it'll be interesting to get your wife's perspective on that as well. Okay, no problem. Brian, thanks again, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks. It's a real pleasure.